So Madeleine Albright has passed away. And what was interesting to me is the number of politicians on Twitter who were praising Madeleine Albright. I want to remind everyone that Madeleine Albright was a warmonger, not a nice lady. I'm going to show you some clips tonight. But the way that they were talking about her in such a way as if she was this gentle soul, this kind spirit. Nah. Nah. Mark Panicki said, ding dong, the witch is dead. Oh, we're going to get into it. But I also found it interesting that even, of course, mainstream media networks, when talking about Madeleine Albright, they wanted to start off again with identity politics, make it seem like she was this great person. I'm going to show you the mainstream media side of her, and then I'm going to show you the real side of Madeleine Albright and why I do not think people should be praising her and pretending like she was this magnificent person. So the first thing that I want to show you is a clip from CNN. They are going to talk about her passing, and I want you to pay close attention to the way that they start this discussion. So here we go.
We have some sad breaking news now.
Oh, hold on. For some reason, it's really low. Oh, okay. All right, here we go.
Former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has died at the age of 84. She was the very first woman to hold that position, a strong diplomat, known to never mince words and
Notice how they started off with she was the first woman to hold that position. Of course. I'll let it go on.
remembered by many for those unique pins and brooches that she would wear to send subtle messages to world leaders. CNN's Richard Roth looks at her legacy.
As a diplomat, where tact and treading gingerly on contentious issues are the norm, Madeleine Albright was never one to mince words.
This is not cojones. This is cowardice.
Whether it was her colorful use of language condemning Cuba for shooting down U.S. pilots, or her strident assessment of the leader of Iraq.
I don't think the world has seen, except maybe since Hitler, somebody who is quite as evil as Saddam Hussein.
The Iraqi dictator was said to be so incensed by Albright's verbal attacks, he published a poem in Iraqi newspapers calling her an unrelenting serpent. Albright's response was one of quiet defiance. From that moment forward, she wore a brooch in the shape of a serpent at every meeting with the Iraqi leadership. And she began using her pins, as she called them, as a way of sending subtle messages without uttering a single word. Born Marie Jana Korbelova to a Czechoslovakian diplomat, Albright and her family fled the former Czechoslovakia after the Nazi invasion in 1939 and later found safe haven in the United States in 1948. She became a U.S. citizen, married media tycoon Joseph Patterson Albright, and had...
I want everybody to pay close attention to what was just said there for just a second. She married a media tycoon. Just keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your head. She married a media tycoon, and then she went into politics. And we all know those two tend to back each other. Mainstream media gives the talking points that DC wants it to give. That's why we don't hear the whole truth. That's why you have independent media. Truth usually comes out eventually, though. Going back in.
had 3 children, all while working on her PhD and learning multiple languages. In 1982, Albright took a prestigious position.
I'm sorry, but the way that they say that, they make it seem like they said she had 3 children, all while earning her PhD. She was married to a media tycoon, a tycoon. When you marry into money, you can do that. I just want to point that out there. I'm sorry. Come back to me with the woman who had 3 kids and earned her PhD and she was not married into money. Come back to me with that.
As professor of international affairs at Georgetown University. but it was the shock of her husband asking for a divorce around that same time that changed the course of her life.
There was an identity crisis. As it turns out, I think those next 10 years were the ones that were the most influential.
She poured herself into her work, becoming foreign policy advisor to then presidential candidate Bill Clinton in 1992. Clinton, in turn, tapped her for the post of U.S. ambassador to the United Nations after he won the White House. As UN ambassador, Albright became known for her tenacity and determination to elevate U.S. interests at the UN through what she called aggressive multilateralism.
We must summon the spine to deter, the support to isolate, and the strength to defeat those who run roughshod over the rights of others.
She pushed hard for U.S. boots on the ground in the Balkans. The U.S. administration chose diplomacy instead, a decision that came at a costly human price.
So you heard that. She pushed hard for boots on the ground.
An even bigger regret, the failure of the U.S. to intervene to stop the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
I, Madeleine Albright.
Lessons learned from her past and the present, as Albright cemented her place in history, becoming the first ever female U.S. Secretary of State on January 23, 1997. When the Kosovo conflict erupted in 1998, Albright lobbied forcefully for NATO intervention. The NATO-led effort helped Kosovo gain independence from Serbian control, and the ICC indicted Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic for war crimes.
Never again will there be massacres and mass graves.
All right, I want to come out here for just a second because they mentioned Serbia. Madeleine Albright had a very negative view about Serbian people. In fact, I happen to have a video clip of that. You want to see it? Watch this. Let me show you who Madeleine Albright really was. All right, let me share this image here. So this is Madeleine Albright. She's at a book signing in Prague. And there are some people from Serbia who are at the book signing. Listen to what she says. You'll have to listen closely. I'll play it twice so you can pick up on it. But listen to this.
Get out!
Volejte policii. Vy jste to neslyšet. To je válečný zločinec. To je krvavá bába.
To je naše dílo. Čekáme k vrítě. Vy jste váleční. Get out.
Vy jste válečný.
Nemáte tady co dělat. Volá někdo do policii, volejte. Policii.
Čistý, to je vaše práce.
Jsme válečný zločinec.
Did you catch that? Let me go back just a little bit more. You have to listen closely. Right about here. Listen to this.
Čistý, to je vaše práce.
Jsme válečný zločinec.
She called them disgusting Serbs. That's what she just said to them. That lets you know right then and there exactly how Madeleine Albright felt about those people. She didn't just say, get out. She had to call them disgusting. How could you stoop that low? Whether you agree with the conflict that they had in their country or not, do you go so far to call them disgusting? That's how she felt. This is the woman that a lot of these politicians, including Miss Barbara Lee, Hillary Clinton, of course, are praising all over social media. Barbara Lee, who is African American. So when I tell you that the party controls what happens, the party controls what happens. That's not all of it, though. There's more from Madeleine Albright. She said a lot of things. Listen to this. Madeleine Albright dies at 84, once defended U.S. sanctions despite deaths of 500K plus Iraqi children. I want you to listen to this video. This is going to be disturbing. I'm just going to warn you what she says here. Greg Bruce said, "What does their ethnicity have to do with anything, racist hag?" Exactly. What does that matter? That's who Madeleine Albright was. But listen to this video. Now, this is coming from Democracy Now! Hopefully there's no ad.
Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has died of cancer at the age of 84. Albright served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations from 1993 to 1997, when President Bill Clinton nominated her to become the first female Secretary of State. Albright was a staunch supporter of U.S. power and defender of authoritarian leaders, including Egypt's Hosni.
Did you hear what she just said? Madeleine Albright was a defender of U.S. power. And I touched on this a little bit earlier on RBN about people believing that the United States has to be the most powerful country in the world, has to be the greatest country in the world. Madeleine Albright was one of those people. And that is a dangerous way of thinking. And the reason why it's a dangerous way of thinking is because it causes you to see other people, other countries as less than. Just like she did when she called the people from Serbia disgusting. That happens a lot in this country. People say USA is the best. We're the best. We're supposed to be the best. And it can cause you to look down on other people. If you notice in this video clip, there's Hillary Clinton to her left. And oh my, is that Cory Booker to her right? Cory Booker, the one who said he fights for criminal justice, talks about racial inequality. That Cory Booker is right by Madeleine Albright's side. And that is why no matter what they run on, no matter what they've done before they join the Democratic Party, it doesn't matter once they join the party because they conform to what the party wants. And at that time, what the party wanted was for Madeleine Albright to speak at Hillary's event. Racist, warmonger Madeleine Albright. I'll go back into the video.
Mubarak in Indonesia's Suharto. She was a key architect of NATO's 78-day bombing of Serbia in 1999. In 1998, she joined President Clinton's foreign policy team in a live CNN event promoting the administration's threat to bomb Iraq into complying with the demands of UN weapons inspectors. An exchange between Albright and Columbus public school teacher John Strange was later billed by the media as the question heard around the world.
Look at all the people sitting next to her. There's John Kerry up at the podium. You have Colin Powell. Oh, what do you know? She's sitting next to another war criminal. What do you know? And next to Colin Powell is Hillary Clinton. I can't make this up.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
Listen to this.
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
Secretary of State Albright defended the Clinton administration's devastating sanctions against Iraq. In 1996, she was interviewed by Leslie Stahl on CBS's 60 Minutes.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And, you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Hold up. Now, there's a couple of problems with the clips I just showed you there. That's who Madeleine Albright is. I just want to remind everybody of that. Because the amount of praise that she's been getting this week is ridiculous. I'm going to go back and we're going to talk through it. Listen to what she says again. Now, listen to the question that this gentleman is asking her, which he's spot on, by the way.
Staunch supporter of U.S. power and defender of authoritarian leaders, including Egypt's Hosni Mubarak and Indonesia's Suharto. She was a key architect of NATO's 78-day bombing of Serbia in 1999. In 1998, she joined President Clinton's foreign policy team in a live CNN event promoting the administration's threat to bomb Iraq into complying with the demands of UN weapons inspectors. An exchange between Albright and Columbus public school teacher John Strange was later billed by the media as the question heard around the world.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
He brought it right back to the problem that the United States government is the one that was aiding those countries, giving them the weapons to do so that they could do the attacks that they did. The United States government was the reason for that. Interestingly enough, though, because I don't think you'd be able to ask that question today on mainstream media, I think they would cut you off. Or they would tell you, we got to go to commercial. The narrative is even more controlled now than it was back then. Don't think you'd be allowed to ask this question. Now, when they have town halls on television, especially CNN, people are already handpicked before the town hall happens. Some people don't realize that. They make it seem like they're calling on someone from the audience. They're not. Those people are already chosen beforehand. They already know they're going to be called on, and they already know what they're going to say. And for the commentators like Don Lemon, well, used to be Chris Cuomo, I'm sorry. Used to be Chris Cuomo. They already know what those audience members who are called on, they already know what their answer is going to be. I know this. My husband and I, we went to one of these town halls. They ask you to submit your questions ahead of time. Maybe you'll be chosen. The people are already chosen. So for those of you who don't know that, surprise, just wanted to reveal that to you. It's not legit. They pick certain people. I saw this through Bernie's 2020 campaign. Some of the people that they chose to ask questions during the town hall had worked for the Hillary Clinton campaign. They didn't put that under their description, under their name. They just put progressive activist. People working for the organization of change. They'll do things like that. So you don't know exactly who they're linked to. But he was right to ask her that question. And her response is terrible.
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
The crowd is booing her. See, CNN learned from the past. They realized we can't just let anybody come into this town hall. They're booing her. She goes on to mention weapons of mass destruction with Saddam Hussein. Do we ever find those, by the way? Remember that noise? Remember that? That's why we went over there. Because of weapons of mass destruction. What weapons? That was the narrative that they preached. This was a failure. Since she mentioned Saddam Hussein, I want to remind you that they took Saddam Hussein out, and that gave rise to ISIS. I'm not here to defend him by any means necessary, but this is what happens when we intervene in other countries and we try to take over their leadership, remove the leadership that they have. Other people come in. Right, Lewis, exactly. Still looking for those, right? Another group emerges and they are worse off than the person who was there before them. That's Madeleine Albright. I'm go back on to the worst part. The worst part.
Secretary of State Albright defended the Clinton administration's devastating sanctions against Iraq. In 1996, she was interviewed by Leslie Stahl on CBS's 60 Minutes.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And, you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
That's Madeleine Albright. The children were starving in Iraq, and Madeleine Albright said on 60 Minutes that she felt it was worth it. Now, why is this relative today? Because nothing has improved. Right now, you have kids in Afghanistan going through the same thing because of the sanctions put on them by the US government. Same thing, didn't learn at all. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, what if this would have happened today? What if someone said that on 60 Minutes today? And then I had to remind myself, wouldn't happen because the reporters at 60 Minutes wouldn't be allowed to ask that question in the first place. That's how much the narrative has changed. You don't hear them ask those kinds of questions. They ask questions that are, for the most part, safe. Those questions are approved ahead of time. So when I show you that about Madeleine Albright, why in the hell are people praising her on social media? That's just a little bit. That's just a little I can show you in the time that I have. There is more. The same disgust that she had for people from Serbia, she had that same disgust and lack of empathy and compassion for the kids in Iraq. I wonder why. Some of the people that were praising Madeleine Albright, man, she really has some nerve. Representative Barbara Lee. So Barbara Lee tweeted this. I am devastated by the passing of Madeleine Albright. As a refugee, skilled diplomat, first female Secretary of State, and champion of democracy. She was a huge inspiration to myself and millions of others. Sending my deepest condolences to her family. May she rest in peace. That's Barbara Lee. I didn't like that tweet too much. So I responded, if Madeleine Albright was your inspiration, we need to talk. Barbara Lee said that. You see how the Democratic machine works? You don't think every Democrat representative wasn't encouraged to tweet out something positive about Madeleine Albright by the party? Really, Barbara Lee? Ashura said, devastated by the death of a racist. What? Remember what Cornel West said about black faces in high places? Barbara Lee, really? I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Greg Bruce says, right, because everyone in Iraq is Saddam Hussein. She was so full of shit, and so is anyone who praises her while pretending to be progressive. That's right. That's right. Monarch said, hey, hell, Sabby. During fourth primary debate 2020, MSNBC fucked up when they pinned Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard together. LOL. Yes, I think we all remember how that turned out. Greg Bruce says, absolutely, like how every time Tulsi started to call out other candidates warmongering in the 2020 debates, just happened to be time for a commercial. Right? Snork says flags are at half mast in Iowa. Wow. Right? How soon, how quickly they forget. Madeleine Albright. To hear them sit around here and talk about her as if she was some saint. It's awful. And I can bet you, if Madeleine Albright was a Republican, you think they would have talked about her that way? You think the Democrat politicians would have praised her that way? No. It's disgusting. Yipper99 said, but Sabby, she broke glass ceilings and she is a woman and the first woman of Secretary of State. And that's what they want us to focus on. That part. So now you know, if you've never seen this before, now you know who Madeleine Albright really was. I don't know why they don't think that we can't go back to old video in this day and age. Hitflix says, now I know why the flags were lowered at my job. She's garbage. Yeah, Hitflix. Yeah, I know. I'll go ahead and take that one, Eric. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Lucifer is saying, hey, Maddie, welcome. Join your friends Scala, Bush, Senior, Reagan, McCain, J. Edgar Hoover, William Bradley. That's Malcolm X assassin. In the lava soup we got stewing. Lucifer looking at his watch says, your friend Kissinger should be joining us here soon. She replies, what about my friend Justice Thomas? Lucifer says, maybe, but I got word he has to go upstairs first from what I understand. Thank you for this tip as well. Thurgood wants to have a word with him. Once you start seeing pieces of his soul start falling from the sky into this soup, then you know he has arrived. So come on, jump in or be pushed. Wow. Lady Alex M said, this is the same as when they praise war crime mongers, Powell, Rumsford, and McCain. Exactly. 100%.